empty nest, to personal best. Let's fly, Mom, fly.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Fly Mum Fly. We have a special guest who has fearlessly tackled the challenges of life after children leave the house. Initially concerned about the impact on her relationship with her husband and the void it might create, they found that by immersing themselves in work and planning trips and cultural events, their bond naturally grew stronger, bringing contentment to their lives. Driven by her desire to find a greater purpose, Bistra pursued life coaching, a decision that proved to be transformative. Her natural inclination to give and her joy in witnessing her clients' successes made coaching perfect for her. Now, as an empowerment coach, she specializes in helping busy professionals achieve emotional freedom, overcome limiting beliefs, and turn their dreams into reality. That sounds pretty good. Hi, Bistra. Thank you so much for jumping on today.
Hi, Bobby. So good to meet you. Thank you for
Yes.
inviting me.
Oh, thank you. It's just a pleasure to have you here. Before me, listeners, I have the most extraordinarily beautiful woman who hails from Bulgaria and just mentioned off air that, Bistra, you have now been in the United States for 20 years?
Over 20 years, actually.
Over 20 years. Did you have your children in this country?
No, so I came to America in 93. At that time, my older son was 18 months old.
Right.
And but Alexander, so my kids have quite large age gap. They have 11
Yes.
years difference.
Yes.
Alexander, the younger one, was born in the States. So right now I have 31-year-old and 20. Tomorrow, as of tomorrow, he'll be 20 years old.
Oh, happy
Yeah, but
birthday.
thank you. And yes, so the reason it ended like that, it's we came to the States. Me and my husband, we both physicians, so it has been very challenging journey. Like doing our residency and fellowship trainings here, working without any family support. So it has been just the two of us raising the kids. So
That
yeah.
takes a special kind of couple, I think. So your husband is Bulgarian as well.
Yes, he's Bulgarian as
Wow.
well. He's an
Wow.
anesthesiologist also, but he works in one of the adult institutions here in Boston.
Oh, you're in Boston. Oh my
Um,
goodness. I just just to go into travel for a minute. New England is one of my favorite parts of this country. And I was in Boston on a road trip last year and I love it so much. Do you enjoy living in Boston?
yes, we when we came first to the States, we lived in Pennsylvania. We
Yes.
started in little town called Lancaster, and
That's where my
then
sister-in-law lives.
oh my God, it's such a small world, isn't
It
it?
is such a small world. Yes.
And then my husband did his anesthesia training in Hershey, Pennsylvania, the chocolate town of
Yes.
USA. So
Yes.
we lived there for 3 years. Every morning smelled like chocolate, and only on Wednesday they were roasting the peanuts
Yes.
for the wreath.
Yes.
And it was interesting experience for me coming from a big city back in Bulgaria, but it was perfect for raising our older son at that time.
Yes,
So
I can. I've
and then
been to Hershey.
yeah,
We went there, and it's a lovely little town, obviously full of a lot of history, and you have the factory there. So
yes.
you're now in Boston, and I know that you're a pediatrician. Well, you're an
No, I'm pediatric
anesthesiologist.
anesthesiologist. Yes, yes.
Yes. So I would love to know, what hospital are you working in? Because my husband is American, although he lived in Australia for 20 years. That's where I met him. But their eldest daughter is a hemophiliac,
Oh,
and they spent a lot of time. Is there Boston Children's Hospital?
Boston Children's, that's where I work.
Oh,
Yes.
see, this is weird. Now I've got goosebumps because you were in Lancaster where my sister-in-law lives. You work now at Boston Children's where my husband took his eldest daughter. Now she's now 31. So that was a long time ago, but they did live in Boston. And, it's funny. And I think that you'll appreciate this. He said, how we always talk about what would you do if you won the lottery and you won millions of dollars? He always says, I would give a big chunk to Boston Children's because of the
Yes.
help they gave us with my eldest daughter.
Oh, I believe that, we, of course, as one of the best, would like to think we are one of the best hospitals in the world. We do get a lot of referrals, and I would like to say that we have groundbreaking research going on at Children's for sure. Like the conditions we see, the treatments we provide, I think it is groundbreaking, really. So I'm very proud to be working there. I love my patients. That they're a very significant part of my identity, to be honest with you.
I really love that. So, when we were off air, we were talking about how I'm from Australia and you're from Bulgaria. And obviously, when you are an immigrant in the US, there are certain cultural differences. And I would like to touch on that briefly if we can today. It's something that really interests me, and also meeting someone who has had the same experience, because it can be a little different. You sometimes have to watch what you do and say because culturally here it's different. Do you have
Yes.
any stories to share or any insights as to what you experienced when you first moved to this country?
Uh, so when I came to the States, to be honest with you, I did not speak a word English. So I only knew hi and bye, because
Yes.
back in Bulgaria in high school, I was German high school. So I spoke German and
Hmm.
I learned German. So one of my first experiences that was not a good experience in America was I arrived with this 18-month-old baby. We had four big suitcases, and and I had two bananas in my bag just for him during the trip, because it was very long trip coming from Sofia, Bulgaria, the capital, to Boston. It was no, actually not in Boston, but in New York. My husband picked me up from Kennedy. It was 10-hour flight. So for me to kind of keep him occupied, and I wasn't sure about what the food was, I had the bananas because he loved bananas. So I came to the States, and so they saw me with the child, and they made me unload all my four suitcases all by
Oh,
myself.
no.
Not a man helped me. And then they found the bananas, and the guy started yelling at me, and I'm like, I don't have no idea what he's talking about.
No. Oh,
So,
no.
like coming back in Europe and in Bulgaria at that time, we're talking 1993. Um, I think the emancipation of women was not to that extent, and
Mhm.
women was still held. The door would be held for you when it was part um, of our culture, and nobody saw that as being offensive in any way. While here, women were so much more advanced in their rights, and they did not want to be treated as second class person. So this was one of my first things. Like, okay, so I guess it's a little different. And over the years, it just like yes, just being really alert how you're saying things, not to offend anybody,
Mm.
because and being a foreigner and the language not being my primary language, sometimes words slip and it's not like you mean them,
Yes.
just happens.
Yeah.
And I catch myself many times kind of explaining myself, like kind of really going out of my way to clarify that what I'm saying, it's not, if it sounds in any way harsh or impolite, that's not how I mean it at
Mm.
all. And I think over the years you kind of get used to it.
Yeah, do
Yeah.
you think people have been quite understanding of the cultural differences? I'm guessing and assuming that maybe on the East Coast they might be more understanding and more flexible than perhaps somewhere like where I am in the Midwest.
Okay, I'll be happy to hear what's your experience in the
Yes.
Midwest. For me personally, when we moved to Lancaster and Hershey, Pennsylvania, I don't think people, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, but I
Yep.
think 1993, that part of America, foreigners was still not a common presence. So
Hmm.
they had hard time, like understanding my accent. I mean, I'll never get over it, of course. But it's like asking me multiple times to repeat myself,
Yeah.
correcting me. That was my experience in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So it was kind of uncomfortable. But coming here in Boston, that I think that's why we love Boston.
Yes.
Boston is so international. Like you walk on the streets, and you, especially on holidays or when you go to some of the historic sites, there are people with accents and people speaking different languages. So I
Yes.
think that's why we stayed here. We feel very much at home here.
I get that. And first of all, I want
And
to say that I think,
tolerance is very high, very high. It's like you, like they'll help you. Like if you're searching for the word, they'll help you. If there's like, they'll educate you, and all coming from good place. So I
yeah,
love,
yeah, I'm
absolutely.
glad. And I can see that. When I was there last year, I felt that it was more of a multicultural city. It's obviously a lot busier than where we are. I think that your English is absolutely fantastic, but I can get
Thank you.
that in the early 90s in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, there might not have been a lot of Bulgarians walking around the street. And the fact that you came to a country and only knew hi and bye, and look where you are now. It's just
Oh, thank you.
incredible that
Yes.
you've transitioned from a European country to the United States, doing the job that you do, which involves communicating. You have to be correct. I mean, you can't say one thing and mean another as, a physician. So I can only but commend you and your husband for the amazing jobs that you have done. In relation to cultural differences, I have found that here in the Midwest, they may not speak as we might do in Australia. And when I say that, I refer to, they call it cuss words. Now, in Australia, we will throw in a word to color our language, and
Mm.
it's not meant as offensive. It's meant just as a part of how you are constructing your conversation, and you throw it in for a bit of color and variety. And it's not necessarily offensive at home. Cussing, I believe, yes, is offensive if there is an
Mm.
aggressive meaning behind it, but we tend to throw it in regardless. Now, in the Midwest, I have found that it's not something that you can necessarily do. And in the beginning, I was a little bit surprised. It has gotten me into trouble a few times, but even when I've tried to explain our cultural differences, some will be open to understanding that we do things differently in Australia, and I've had another person who just shut me down completely and doesn't interact with me. So I guess it's up to the person. I
Yes.
mean, I'm responsible for the way I communicate, and even though I
Mm.
communicate from the country that I was raised in, I also like to communicate if there are challenges and difficulties and maybe offense taken. I really like to explain it, but you can only do the best you can do in life. And honestly, if you aim to come from a place of love and respect, that's all you can do. We cannot control how other people deal with us or perceive us. We can only control how we choose to present ourselves to the world. I would love, from reading
Absolutely.
your information, I would love to hear about your empty nest story and how that unfolded with the boys. And particularly, I think one really interesting thing you brought up in the information that you sent me was that everything wasn't absolutely perfect with the way that you were interacting or communicating perhaps with your husband, but you took some certain steps to make
Mm.
sure that you, I guess, got to know each other again as an empty nest couple. So can you tell us about that phase of life and what you did?
Okay, I'll tell you where it all started from. So I live in this kind of high-end suburb of Boston. The reason we chose it because the public school system is very strong. And when we came, so we basically, I didn't tell you the story, but we stayed here in the States for 10 years. We had some visa requirements, and also there was some family pressure for us to go back to Bulgaria. So we left. Alexander was just born. He actually was 3 months old when we left, but he had medical condition, and we were very nervous of going back to Bulgaria, where the healthcare was still not like that high end.
Mhm.
So we ended up in Germany for 2 years. We lived in Germany for 2 years. He outgrew his problem. Then we moved to Bulgaria, where our families were. But things did not go well. So coming back here, our older son was just supposed to start high school, and we are public school system people. We believe in that, and that's what we have been trained in. And so we decided to like choose a suburb that has relatively good schools while he's adjusting. So it was a rough 4 years, pretty rough with him. He was not happy of the whole situation. But what I saw in our suburb is like so many of his friends, the family did break once the last child was out of high school,
Wow.
which really made me worry. And I talk with some people, and they, like, the women will always say, "Oh, we were together just to raise the kids." At some point, become obvious that they are not going to stay together, and I didn't want to be one of that family. And I knew we've been very busy building our careers, but it was, for me, it became kind of obsession that I need to figure out a way not to go that path. So what? So I knew I had few years because Alexander is so much younger. But when he started getting into sixth, seventh grade, this became even more of a importance for me. So just like talking with different people, figuring out ways. I knew that we both will fall, will get into our practices, more into our clinical work. And I didn't want to be somebody who the only thing I'll have in my life is going to be work.
Mhm.
Like the kids are out of the house, it's going to be work. So what I did, I got ourselves like as a members of one of the big cultural events in Boston called Boston Speaker Series. So it's once a month event. You go to that. We plan with every 3 months. We try to do like a mini vacation somewhere, and we have now good track record of just traveling the two of us. We found some other like fun things, like we did paint night together. We become very good friends with two of the families of Alexander's friends.
Yep.
So once a month we try to go and have dinner with friends. So just like, keep bringing stuff, right? You
Mhm.
need to be active. You cannot just rely on the fact that you've been married for 20 or whatever years, um, and that things will just fly. Actually, they don't, because many things change, and sometimes we feel like we as mothers feel the uh, the become empty nesters, and it's hard for us. But surprisingly, it's hard for the husbands also.
Yeah. Yeah.
We underestimate how hard. The presentation for them might be different, so they might become more closed in, or they might pay more attention to their jobs, but they suffer through it, and it's a journey together. um so that's what we did. For I kept pushing for us as a couple. I mean, we never really, I think the fact that we came in this country is very young couple. I was 25 years old when we came. He was 28 years old. And we built the family together without any help. So I think we always been very strong family.
Mm. Mm.
But becoming empty nesters is definitely adds a little bit
I
different spice.
love I love listening to you, and just, you just said that word strong, and that's what I was thinking about when listening to you, because it's such a difficult process to come to this country. And I'm not sure if listeners fully understand, but it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how much money you have, or whatever, you still join a queue. You still join a line of people who want to immigrate to this country. So the bureaucracy and the paperwork
Mm.
can be unending, it feels like. And when we went through this process, Frank was already over here. And Lucy and I, he's obviously American. So Lucy and I would come over for 3 months, go back to Sydney, wait, come over for 3 months and visit and go back. And at that time, we were told by by the immigration department that there were 2.5 million people aiming to get into this country. And we were just one of those or two of those people in that line. But I think the fact that you went through that, you immigrated only at 25 and 28 to a new country, you do a job that requires you both to be finding solutions all the time for something so important as a human life to have a better life experience. It doesn't surprise me that you thought, right, this is how I've seen other couples in my area. I will not go down that path. I don't want to be a part of the problem, so I'm going to be a part of the solution. And I love this about you, which also does feed into what you're doing now. So you're a pediatric anesthesiologist. And if you can share with our listeners that you decided to have another job as well, if you'd like to share with us what you're doing and how that particular journey started.
Oh yeah. So what Bobby is referring to, it's the life coaching business that I also have. So that was caused by COVID actually.
Right.
I didn't know. I needed to find something for myself, and I was for a while. I was very much into photography. I was taking courses. I enjoyed taking because I needed something else for myself as a way to handle the empty nest phenomenon. But then COVID happened, and I had my father died unexpectedly. So there was a lot of like emotional load that I needed to figure out. And I was already listening to the podcast of Brooke Steele, who is the director of the school that I finished. She's well-known life coach. The name of the podcast, if people are interested, is the Life Coach School.
Right.
And she and just listening to her, I figured it's like I am this type of personality that I love talking with people. For me, what I get gratification and satisfaction from, it's the giving to people and helping them. I'm a physician after all.
Yeah.
It's imprinted in me, and so I underwent the certification um, um, almost 2 years ago, and then I decided I'm gonna try to find a way to help more people. So I'm building my coaching business now. It's haven't been the smoothest road just because my clinical work is quite demanding,
Sure.
but I also coach for a few organizations for free as part of like my like just I want to give and be of service. And now I have few programs that I'm developing. I have my own clients. So it's going, and it's very fulfilling. It's like it really makes a huge difference for me for at the end of the day how I feel. Like
Yeah. Tell me, how do you find the time? So, because if
yeah,
you're a
well,
physician, like when do you
um,
find the time? That's incredible.
to be honest with you, I do coach in the evenings after I come
Yeah.
home from work. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so far the majority of my clients have been physicians. So kind of works out well because we all have long days, and in the evening people find the time to connect.
Right.
But now because I'm basically really the way I advertise myself, it's like empowerment coach for busy professionals.
Yes.
But mostly I have mostly women as clients, but lately uh, my goal is basically by helping people overcome their excuses, because I don't know if you're a coach as well, and we always find an excuse why
Oh,
not to
yeah.
do something, or why not to go after our goal. So as part of that whole journey, I'm working mostly with them to identify what are the obstacles and try to overcome them, and it has been very very good. I also, since I'm a general life coach, I also coach on relationships. I have a like few different programs, but yeah, mostly at the moment I'm doing one-to-one coaching. And another highlight, because I'm such a believer in coaching, in the power of coaching, of making people's life better and more fulfilling, I'm working with the leadership of the hospital to build like this coaching program and opportunity for people as internal coaches. If people want to like find somebody to talk to be coached, I'm trying to establish that as an opportunity, because physicians everywhere, and not just physicians, like healthcare providers, are really suffering right now. We need help, and the way I'm selling it to my hospital is that coaching is not a recommendation. It's like you help people not to get in that situation.
Sure, sure. That's is that a Bulgarian trait, working so hard for other people? And sorry, that's I've put that both together, but what I meant was, is it a Bulgarian trait, working so hard, and also is it a Bulgarian trait to serve others? Is that something that is a big part of your culture?
Um, I was raised by my parents with the idea that you work hard and you don't wait, and you wait for to be recognized, but you don't go and ask for anything. But I think actually I would like to think that physicians, people who choose to go into medicine because of passion,
Yes.
are like this type of people.
Right,
They
right.
just, yeah. I mean, I would like to think so, because I see how my husband works. I see my colleagues. Like we are, yeah, we put our patients, their well-being as our priority. For example, like even though as an anesthesiologist, I don't have patients in the hospital. I don't need to go around. But after we finish a case and a few days later we go, we check on our patients. We get in conversations like hours after our work day finished to like make sure that the next day it's prepared. We talk with our trainees to make sure that they know every detail about the patient, so there are no mistakes. So I think physicians in general, I think we are programmed like that. I
Yeah.
would like so.
It was interesting on your website. I was reading a bit about your story, and you said in the past you had always done things for others. And then you asked yourself quite a powerful question, which was a wake up call to you, or for you, I should say. And that question was, what defines me? How
Mm.
hard was it to answer that question if your focus has always been the well being of others? How do you actually go through that process to be able to look within when you've been so used to looking outside of yourself and serving outside of yourself?
I think with COVID and the burnout that I had, that was like the wake up call for me, because I for years I had no problems of serving others, and as I said, as part of my upbringing, and I think it's also generational. We were never taught of how to think about ourselves.
Right.
For example, nobody ever told me that if you take good care of yourself, you'll be able to take better care for everybody else.
It's so true.
That was like something that I learned with coaching. It was like,
Yeah.
and as a physicians, we also constantly, nobody at the hospital is asking us how we feel. We just like expected to just keep going.
Right.
So for me, figuring out and actually identifying some of the limiting beliefs that I have had, and there are like many of them just socially, culturally imprinted and installed. Just identifying those things, because what I found also is some of those have been the reasons why, like, kind of they kept holding me back. For example, I was talking with a friend of mine who is also a very big proponent of coaching and is helping me with pushing the program at the hospital level. I was telling her, like, before coaching, I'll never push so hard, and I'll never, like, if somebody tells me no, I'll be like, oh, okay, I'm sorry, I for the inconvenience, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, actually, no, I know I'm making a difference, and people need that. You closing this door, I'll go knock at the other. So this, like, kind of, I empowered myself because I become firm believer of certain things. I found like my purpose in those new things. It's like I'm gonna push for it, and at some point it might not be successful, but at least I'm like, I know I did everything I could.
Yeah. It's amazing hearing you and speaking with you. And I can only imagine the positive change you're having on your clients. You're a walking, talking example of, following through on what you help others with. So I just want to really thank you so much for joining us
Oh,
today.
thank you, Bobby. Thank you. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Before we go, I'd like to ask you one question. If you had some wisdom to impart on another empty nest mum, or a bit of advice to empty nest mothers in general, what might that be?
Oh, there's so many things I can tell them. First and most important, you are not your kids, and your identity, it's not just being a mother or being a parent. And
Yeah.
for a very long time I thought, so I'll be 55 years old this year, and for a very long time I was like, oh my god, by the time the kids finish school I'll be so old, there is nothing for me at age of 50. It's not true. There is always time, and if you're motivated, if you want to create something and reinvent yourself, believe you can. You so much wiser after raising your kids. Also, the other thing I want to say is, like, what we sometimes as parents, we like holding on so tightly to our kids, but try to let go of that grip and see them as grown-ups.
Yeah.
The relationship that you can actually create with them, they say, like, move from being the cheerleader, no, move from being the coach to being their cheerleader, right?
Right.
It's the relationship, it's very different, but it's so fulfilling just
Yes.
looking at the beautiful people and individuals you created. And it is, I mean, sorry to the husbands, but it's really because of everything we do for the
Yeah.
kids when they growing up. Enjoy them, bring the conversations to different levels, they will really appreciate it. So you all of us, we like wonderful people, and we should keep growing. um like, being empty nester is not the end of the road for us, so keep
Yeah.
dreaming, keep going after your dreams.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really, really great advice. And I hope when I'm in Boston next time, I can actually come and
Yeah.
say hello
Oh,
and have a cup
absolutely,
of
I would love
coffee.
to meet you in
It would
person,
really be
Bobby.
fantastic because I'm a big fan of yours now. And so, for the
Ah,
listeners, we're going to put all of Bistra's links for her coaching practice and everything else that she's doing and her social media. We'll stick that in the podcast episode description. But I just want to say once again, Bistra, thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you via this forum. And to all our listeners, thank you so much for connecting. And we will see you next time.
From empty nest to personal best, let's fly, Mom.